Hey, check this out.
For the past few months, we have been calling Mitt Romney Mr. 22%. That's because no matter what he did, no matter how many of his opponents self-immolated on the campaign trail, Mitt Romney, poor guy, could never seem to get past roughly 22% in the polls. It was like an artificial ceiling that he could never really break through, no matter what else was going on.
I'm sorry, can we stop it here for a minute? I just want to go back to something. Can we take a look at that graph that she was putting up on the screen? Take a look at this. She says he could never seem to get above roughly 22% in the polls, but it looks to me like he's gotten well above that. And, well, just where is the 22% line? Can we see that? Put it up there in yellow. Okay, there's 22%. And as you can see, he's broken that barrier. That is not, as she put it, an artificial ceiling. You can see he was well above there back in the summer, and over here in the fall for quite some time. And this is just the average of the national polls. So I'm not really sure why she would be highlighting that. It's almost like she's highlighting the stupidity of calling Mr. Romney Mr. 22%. But no matter. Anyway, Rachel, continue.
Well, tonight there is some exciting news for Mr. Romney and some sad news for our nickname for him, because he is no longer Mr. 22%. Here's what has happened to Mr. Romney's numbers recently. Over the last month, particularly over the past week, it's been ceiling be gone. He is no longer stuck down in the low 20s. Now, all of a sudden, the ceiling appears to be gone. He appears to be clearing 30% for the first time. In the larger picture of this campaign, Romney appears to be cruising. And if you are the Romney campaign, you are excited to see the ceiling gone and the poll numbers starting to soar. But at the same time that Mr. 22% is being retired, Mr. Romney gave his campaign a new number to worry about today. And if I were the Mitt Romney campaign, I'm not sure if I wouldn't prefer old Mr. 22% to the new guy he just brought on the scene. The new guy he just brought on the scene is named Mr. 15%.
The effective rate you've been paying?
What's the effective rate I've been paying? Well, it's probably closer to the 15% rate than anything, because my last 10 years, my income comes overwhelmingly from investments made in the past rather than ordinary income, or rather than earned annual income. I got a little bit of income from my book, but I gave that all away. And then I get speaker's fees from time to time, but not very much.
Mitt Romney today explaining that the personal tax rate he pays is probably pretty close to 15%.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, if most of his income comes from investments, then they're probably, I mean, if he sees a capital gain, then they're probably taxed at the capital gains rate of 15%. Actually, it's a little bit more complicated than that. It has to be an asset that you've held for more than a year, and, well, basically the capital gains tax rate is 15%. I'll get to that a little bit later on. Rachel, continue.
The broader issue here, though, is not just the astonishing magnitude of Mitt Romney's fortune and what he thinks is funny about it. The material issue is what Mitt Romney wants for the country and what he'd do to the country as president. The top marginal tax rate now is about 35%. That's supposedly the tax rate that the richest people in the country pay. But if you are a master of the universe financier like Mitt Romney, you don't have to pay even what other rich people pay. You get a special mini tax rate, 15%, lower than almost anybody else who earns a paycheck in our country.
Okay, hold it right there. Can we freeze frame on that bar graph that she was showing? Take a look at the x-axis of this graph and notice that you see these numbers down here below the different bars. Those are the income levels for the tax bracket. And these tax brackets, as you can see, apply only to married individuals filing joint tax returns. The individual income tax rate schedule that applies to your taxable income varies depending on your marital status and whether or not you file joint returns if you are married. But you will notice further that the x-axis under that 15% bar with Mitt Romney's head on top of it is unlabeled. That is because it is a special tax rate, but it is a tax rate on a different kind of income, not on a different type of person. It is a tax rate on a different kind of income. So more on that a little bit later on. Let's get back to what Rachel Maddow was saying.
The reason that the financier's mini tax rate is something that's widely known this year is thanks in large part to billionaire Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has attempted to essentially make a national scandal out of the fact that he, the third richest man in the entire world, pays a lower tax rate than his own secretary does. And when President Obama came out with the proposal known as the Buffett rule to try to correct that, to try to get millionaires who earn their money off investments to pay a little bit more so they're not taxed substantially less than regular working Joes, guess who said he'd stand in the way of the Buffett rule? Mr. 15% himself. Mitt Romney saying that getting billionaires to pay as high a tax rate as, say, their secretaries, he said was the last thing I want to do.
Okay, I have to point out something in that quote that she put up on the screen. Take a look. Notice how that entire first part, increasing taxes on the rich, that whole thing is in brackets. That's bracketed. In other words, he didn't actually say that. She basically, all she did was took the last thing I want to do and just added something to it. I just had to point that out. Let's get back to the tax stuff.
So welcome to the next phase of the campaign, the Mitt Romney's taxes phase, whereupon the nation learns that Mitt Romney's plan as president would be for guys like himself to keep paying their special mini tax rate of 15%, while everybody else, your fault for not being a master of the universe financier, getting coddled by the system.
Okay, no. That's not how it works. The 15% tax rate doesn't apply to just certain people. It is a tax rate on income. Let me explain to you how this works, Rachel. These rates, the ones that you've got on your little bar graph there, these are tax rates on ordinary income, what the IRS refers to as ordinary income. This rate, this is a special tax rate, but it's not special. It's not for special people. It's a special tax rate for a special kind of income that depends on the source. And the different tax rates that are applied to different kinds of income are laid out in the very first section of our tax code. Section 1 of the Internal Revenue Code lists the different tax rates that apply to different kinds of income and at what level and so forth. And subsection H deals with capital gains. Section 1, subsection H1 of the Internal Revenue Code reads as follows. If a taxpayer has a net capital gain for any taxable year, then the tax imposed by this section for such taxable year shall not exceed the sum of, and it gets a little bit more complicated from there. Can we take a look at the rest of subsection H1? Yeah, that's just subsection 1 of subsection H of section 1 of the Internal Revenue Code, which, as you might imagine, has actually thousands of sections. But this is important because it's not only something that is important for people to understand in this election that I feel is going to concentrate a great deal, if Mitt Romney is the Republican nominee for president, on his personal wealth and the taxes that he pays, what his effective rate is. But despite how many Americans file tax returns every year, it's amazing how many of them don't understand the tax system. Actually, it's not that amazing because the tax system is rather complex, and a lot of very smart people who write the tax laws or are charged with enforcing them don't understand them. But let's get back to the interview. We'll pick up on this later on in the video. I want to get back to something they were discussing.
Joining us now is Jonathan Cohn, senior editor of The New Republic and a senior fellow at Demos. Jonathan, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I don't think that anybody begrudges Mitt Romney for being a super rich guy.
What? You don't think anybody begrudges Mitt Romney his... What was the first 4.5 minutes of that segment about? You just got through doing a lengthy diatribe about Mitt Romney's wealth and his low tax rate, which isn't really all that low relative to what most Americans are paying. But what what? You know, sometimes people say something so ridiculous that you just have to move on. I'm not gonna try and attack every little ridiculous thing she says. Let's just move on to the interview.
But if he is the Republican nominee, does the subject of special treatment for rich people in the tax code, special treatment for rich people, more broadly economically speaking, does that move to the center of the campaign?
Okay, I am going to cut in here just because you used the phrase special treatment of rich people in the tax code. Just a reminder, Rachel, the federal government doesn't tax wealth in this country. It taxes income. There is a significant difference, but I just needed to point that out because it'll, keep coming up again and again. Don't conflate the two.
I certainly hope it does. And let's be clear why. Again, like you said, nobody begrudges Mitt Romney making a lot of money. He was obviously an extraordinarily successful businessman. He made a lot of money for investors, and he deserves to be well compensated for that. But right now in America, we have a tax code that inexplicably lets people like Mitt Romney get away with paying lower tax rates than secretaries, than teachers, than plumbers, than all sorts of middle-class people. And
well, it's actually not that hard to explain, John. And there are actually two separate things I take issue with. They're not really that separate and distinct, but 2 points that I have to take issue with on what you just said. The first is this idea that we let people like Mitt Romney get away with paying a much lower tax rate than a lot of middle-class people. Now, I'm not sure how you define middle class, but here's the important thing to remember. It's not like we treat Mitt Romney any differently than any other American taxpayer in the sense that all Americans, everyone who earns income in the U.S. is subject to the same rules. They all are subject to the Internal Revenue Code, and this is an abridged version of it, but you can see there is a lot of rules in there to follow. They are subject to the same rules. Mitt Romney is subject to the same rules regarding ordinary income, those ordinary income tax rates that we showed you earlier in this video, that everyone else is. It just so happens that long-term capital gains are taxed at a different rate because they're a different kind of gain. And this is something that we've done in our country for decades. Now, the second thing I take issue with is this, to the extent that your description of our tax code was accurate, is the inexplicable part of it. Now, it's not really that hard to explain, but I'd like to, at this point, refer you to Stephen Moore, who is, personally, I find his writing style to be very impressive. He explains things clearly and accurately, and he doesn't try and use statistics and figures to mislead people. He's very good about backing up his opinions with objectively verifiable facts. And, well, Steve?
Look, the reason they pay this lower rate is because the tax was already applied at the corporate level, and the real effective rate is about 40%.
Well, now that's a very good point, Steve, about double taxation, and we should address that in a separate video. It would give me a great opportunity to go over some of the stuff I've been learning in my corporate taxation course, which, incidentally, I'll be taking a final on in, well, not very long from now. Perhaps I should suspend making these videos until after finals. Oh well, anyway, Steve, there was something else you said. What was it?
This mythology that the rich don't pay their fair share in taxes, as we showed in our editorial, the actual real tax rate, when you include the corporate taxes that are paid on rich people like Mitt Romney and like Warren Buffett, is actually twice as high as the tax rate that's paid on the middle class.
It's about 30% to 15%.
That's right. That's a big differential. So it is a myth that somehow Warren Buffett and Mitt Romney are paying less than a plumber or a secretary. And, of course, as we all know, Barack Obama is going to make that class warfare issue the centerpiece of his reelection campaign.
Well, I certainly agree with you about that, Steve. I mean, if anyone doubts that President Obama's been fanning the flames of class warfare, then just check out some of my other videos. I mean, I have clips of the president and his acolytes in the media in context, just, propagating these myths and trying to stir up bitterness and envy and resentment among the masses. But let's finish out this the segment from the Rachel Maddow show. Jonathan Cohn was talking about something. Let's just pick up where we left off.
The crazy thing is, here we have Mitt Romney coming along, and not only does he seem to think that's okay, he actually wants to make that imbalance worse. He has put on the table a tax proposal that would give much larger benefits to the wealthy. And actually, depending on how you calculate it and how he implements it, you could actually see some poor people who, after this year, would see their taxes go up in the Romney tax plan.
Really? That sounded a lot to me like wild and unfounded speculation. Did you notice the language he used? Well, depending on how you calculate it and how he implements it, you might see some people might see their taxes go up. I would love to have been in the room and challenged Mr. Cohn on that, but I wasn't, and I can't. Well, I think that's enough for one video, and I think we will do some videos later on in the week about delving into the nuances and practical applications of our tax code, as well as the policy rationale behind some of its more controversial provisions. But until then, please check out my blog. There's one article I'm particularly proud of. It's a short post, a relatively short post, in which I accurately predicted the results of the South Carolina Republican presidential primary. Anyway, go there, find an article you like, comment on it, share it with your friends, and as always, don't mess with the right-wing genius.